Welcome to another Convos with Customers. My name is Eric Martin, Head of Sales here at Vanta, joined today by Tim Collins, Chief Compliance Officer at InDebted. Tim, thanks for joining me.
Eric, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to learn more. First things first, I like to ask folks who join these conversations, tell us a little bit about InDebted. What do you guys do?
So InDebted, Eric, is a digital first, digital only debt collection platform. We are global. Launched in Australia and New Zealand, then quickly expanded into Canada, the UK, and the US. The US is obviously by far our biggest market. We do collection mainly through email, SMS, meaning the customers really want to how they really want to communicate about their debt. Nobody wants a phone call anymore. It's rude if I just call you out of the blue. And so digital debt collection is, we believe, the way of the future. That's
so interesting. And like Chief Compliance Officer, you mentioned the words global. I kind of automatically think that that means that you adhere to any number of kind of international kind of compliance frameworks. Just for folks, kind of maybe for an educational purposes here, what does it mean to be the Chief Compliance Officer at InDebted?
Chief Compliance Officer means I'm in charge of all the compliance. We're a heavily regulated industry in the financial services. So even though we do debt collection, we touch a lot of customer information, PII, and it could be PCI also if we take payment information. And so part of my role is to make sure that we're compliant in each one of those jurisdictions. A big part of that is the InfoSec that sits underneath that piece. And outside the United States, it's an ISO 27001. There's a 9001 also, which we're both certified thanks to you guys. Inside the United States, it's a SOC 2. We're thanks to the Vanta and the dashboard, we are 84% of the way there.
Nice.
So for me, it's like making sure that we have those standards in place from an information security perspective, all the way across every jurisdiction that we're in.
Interesting. And how big is your team?
My team is 9 people. So
and what is the makeup of those people? Like, does InfoSec fall under that group, or is that a completely different kind of function?
So InfoSec falls underneath that group, and so I'm sort of the CISO for our organization right now. So I get to wear multiple hats. The nice piece is that we've got the IT where we've got it kept separate. So we'll look at the program, say, here's what needs to be done. It could be training, could be policies and procedures. It could be you need to change configurations inside of your system. I don't change the configurations inside of systems. Nobody wants anybody to do that. That's where we reach out to the IT and we come back and circle around. Were those changes made? Vanta tells us immediately if that's actually happened or not. So it gives us that transparency on both sides to see where we are we fully compliant? And if they're not, what is the thing that needs to be, quickly changed or updated?
I love it. And I'm just curious, kind of selfish curiosity here. How do you divide and conquer kind of staying on top of these audits across 9 people? Are there certain people that own SOC 2 and others that own ISO? Like, how do you think about that kind of delegation of work?
Well, I'm going to let the secret sauce out. If you using Vanta, normally we would have to have a team. I'd have to have an InfoSec team that was dedicated full time on the compliance side to be able to do that. Once we plugged in with you guys, Eric, the need for the number of people that I needed drops dramatically, right? We still have policies. Once they're written, they need to be updated and reviewed. Vanta does that and tells us that automatically. But really, the IT has more staff working on InfoSec to make sure that things are updated, stay current, if you will, because they're getting those notices. So yeah. I don't want to say I'm cheating, but I do want to say that it feels way easier having all your systems plugged into one system and being able to look at those all at once.
Yeah. Do you have experience kind of navigating things like SOC 2 or ISO in a non-Vanta world?
Yes. I would call it the to be brutally honest, it's the 30 days of hell, because the auditor's coming in and then nobody's read the policies, nobody's done the training, nobody knows what's in the system. So you take everybody's time off of what they're doing, and you spend 30 days getting it ready, and then you've got another 2 or 3 weeks where you're talking with the auditor. So everybody's kind of tied up there. So it is not fun in any way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why did you all sign up for Vanta in the first place? Or maybe taking a step back, how did you learn about us? And then why did you decide to sign up?
Well, being in San Francisco, I mean, it's a kind of a cutting edge town. And so started hearing that there were other ways to do something. Anything that has to be done in a repetitive manner is ripe for disruption and a systematic solution. So I had heard about Vanta and a couple of your competitors, and then just checked them out. And in my previous company, we actually brought Vanta on board. So that was my first experience, and saw the change that made, and then came to Indebted, went through the 30-day thing we just described, and then said, okay, there's a better way to do this. And so the next time that we were going to have to go through, we had to go through our ISO recertification, not just surveillance, but getting completely recertified, a much bigger list than a surveillance. And it was bring you guys on board, get you in here soon enough, and then go through that process. So
I love that. I love that. Are there any, given that you've navigated kind of SOC and ISO before, are there any kind of bigger parts of preparing for these audits that you feel like we've done a really nice job of kind of streamlining or making easier?
I think for me, I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm used to reading all policies and procedures, and I can track all the training. That piece you make it very, very easy to do all of that, right? The more difficult piece for me, not being super strong in tech, is not being able to know that the system's configured, that we have the architecture set up the way that it's supposed to be. And that makes that piece really easy for me. And I think if you were to talk to our IT folks, they would say the exact opposite. Hey, we love it. It's right here. You guys already have that. And then there's the policies and procedures and the training that you need to have to go with it. So I think you guys covered nicely both sides, depending upon who that user is. And you've got, you have trainers in there. You've got all your employees in Vanta. Every single one of our employees are in Vanta, because that's where those policies are kept. That's our system of record. You have all the IT folks that are in there because they're constantly getting notices if there's been a change in a system or something needs to be updated.
Yeah. We've talked about kind of like, we've mentioned IT a few times, and it's common for companies of your size that we work with to kind of have some interdependencies between kind of like the folks who kind of technically own compliance, but also, their IT kind of colleagues who own kind of the kind of practical remediation of any number of controls. I'm curious, like, what's worked well at Indebted when it comes to kind of you partnering with IT on kind of staying on top of compliance things?
I think one of the biggest challenges has always been is I would take an ISO standard, and say, okay, now we have to apply this in our system. And then you would have this sort of discussion that goes back and forth on what that actually means. Vanta very clearly helps us establish what that is, because we want it to be green, right? And so if the IT folks were to come back and say, hey, we want to do this, which could be hypothetically the barest minimum thing that you want to do or that they want to do, if it doesn't meet the requirement, it hasn't helped us at all. So it's given both sides, I think, the ability to meet in a common ground and say, no, here's what I'm interpreting as the requirement. Here's what Vanta is telling us we have to be able to do in order to meet that requirement, do those things, and then get the reward. Hey, we're green in that area. And so that piece really helps on that piece. And I think it's a bridge, because historically you've always had compliance legal people on one side, and then you've always had these IT people on the other side saying compliance doesn't know what they're doing, and the compliance people saying IT doesn't know how to do their job because they're not meeting the requirements. And Vanta has helped us eliminate that discussion.
Yeah, awesome. I'm really happy to hear that. We get that feedback quite often. I think there have been any number of kind of product investments that we've made recently, whether it's kind of allowing more flexible tests or control owners and kind of being more thoughtful with notifications and alerting, whether it's in your task tracker or your kind of collaboration tool like a Slack, that I think is really added up to kind of allowing kind of different teams to kind of, better collaborate. And to your point, kind of like, see the same kind of single pane of glass, for lack of a better word, across all systems. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. You
Yeah, and I
mentioned that,
think,
like you mentioned earlier, kind of any number of ISO frameworks, SOC 2 in the US. You mentioned how indebted is global. Um, Vanta just rolled out kind of support for 10 new kind of frameworks. I'm curious, what's on the horizon? Is there increased leverage that you're going to be able to get from Vanta? Are there other kind of niche international frameworks that y'all are pursuing?
yes, great question, Eric. I think for us, the biggest change we're seeing in the United States is this push around privacy.
Hmm.
Other countries have GDPR. The UK has their own, GDPR standard, if you will. Australia has theirs. We've got the CCPA. Today, plugged into Vanta with all I have, I can immediately see how close I am to being CCPA certified for California, Consumer Privacy Act. So that's the beauty of that. So I think privacy, we've had compliance officers that really came out of Dodd-Frank and the CFPB, sort of that what we saw crash in 2008. There's now this huge push as it relates to privacy and your data. And in the United States, most customers don't even know that their data is probably bought and sold about 800 times in a day, right? Yeah. But eventually that's going to start to shift, and that's going to require privacy officers and a whole nother level of expense. And if I know that I'm already 63% of the way GDPR global, even in the United States, then it becomes much easier to say, okay, we just need to put this amount of resources, I can go budget that. And now all of a sudden we've got some GDPR certification, CCP certification. So I think privacy is huge, but the more that you guys add, for us, we want to be what's called compliance perfect, and we want to change the standard. So in the United States, SOC 2 is sort of the leading information security standard. I want to make it SOC 2 and ISO. And that you want to play in this space, that gives us a competitive advantage if the standard changes to have that. If you've got GDPR, CCPA, you've got that privacy, that's awesome. Any of those other ones that we can add on, you start to create this, check that box off. Now anybody else who wants to do debt collection has to have those in order to be able to even get an RFI or an RFP request. And I think that's what we want to be able to drive, because ultimately it fits into our mission, which is the protection of customer PI, that customer experience. They should feel super safe that their data is safe at Indebted, that whole experience they have through the life cycle of their account.
I love that. It feels like a separate conversation we should have about kind of the combo platter idea there. I'm curious, one question that I like to ask folks is, now having used Vanta for, I think, over a year, what should we build next?
Wow, that's a great question. It would be awesome, because we get a lot of RFPs and RFIs, and I would say 90% of them now, 90% of the questions around information security.
Yeah.
So for me, it's very easy to just go out to Vanta and grab and download some of those. What I would love to be able to do is see you guys become sort of we can plug in directly with a Bank of America or a Chase, and they have all of that. Here you go. When they'll send you the spreadsheet, or you give them access to your Vanta, and away they go. And so I'm not sure that, I think you guys already have that basically built. The issue for us is getting the clients there. So if you can help get the clients there, if you could build that client changer button, that would be awesome.
I love that. That's a really good idea. I feel like right now, the way in which we kind of help, there's kind of two things that come to mind. One is the trust reports that allow you to kind of publicly kind of demonstrate your security posture. You can put these sensitive documents behind a click wrap NDA. The other piece is we partner with Stacksi, which is a kind of another Y Combinator company that helps with security questionnaires. So as these questionnaires come in, whatever the format is, we tie in on the back end with them. So any progress that you've made within Vanta is reflected in their kind of computational guessing of answering these security questions on behalf of your team. So anyways, two baby steps we've made, but I really like your idea as well. And I've enjoyed this chat. I think I'll leave with this. Any final words you'd like to share with folks before we hop?
Just if you're not using Vanta and you're doing it the old school way, keep doing it that way, because I've got a huge competitive advantage and I would like to keep it. So
I love it. Well, Tim, thanks again for taking the time. Thanks for being a customer. Really appreciate you. And have a great rest of your day.
all right, thanks, Eric. Great talking with you.
Likewise.